Maxi mirror. It's too bad it's her black eyeshadow she sucks at. Hey dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under Season 3, Episode 2. Can you believe it? The drama this week? Sweet Marie and the Ships at Sea. We're only on Episode 2! Seriously! Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get to the drama, I really need to thank the people that helped make all of this happen. First off, my YouTube tipperders who use that thanks button that's located just at the bottom of this screen. Not a Nightlight, Ron Patrick Hartman, Pauline Moriarty, and Dr. Kev's gal. Thanks so much, you gorgeous dolls, you. And of course, there's my OG tipperdoers, Catherine McGreechin and Emily Barisso. Thank you, dolls. Finally, I also want to welcome to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, Diva Sue Kilmer. Welcome, lover! And returning to the fold, once again, her ladyship herself, Princess Lady Jenny Anytan. Welcome back, you old slapper. We've missed you. I have links to all of these ways you can help support the Fingerdoo review, including buying Wilma merch at my Redbubble store, in the description box down below. But the best way you can support this channel is to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Seriously, help me reach 10,000 subscribers. I'm so close. Well, I'm not, but I'm closer than some. Just saying. Now, before we get to this week's shenanigans, I need to stiffen my resolve. Ooh, not like that, not like that. Put that away. Seriously, let's put my eye out. Now drink me, Jorge. There you go, that's better. Stiff and cold. Okay, first off, my apologies to Drag Race Down Under. I wasn't holding my breath for Season 3. Yes, Season 2 was better than Drag Race Down Under Season 1. But how could it not be? Season 1 was the entertainment equivalent of having dysentery. Then, to end Season 2 on Spanky Gate? I love you, Spanky! But Sweet Marie and the Ships at Sea, dolls, it's only Episode 2 and the smug get smacked down, the meek make power moves, someone faints. Episode 2 is a very rich tapestry, and I, for one, am here for it. First off, well, the Queens bid Amel a sober farewell. Clearly, seeing the first Queen sashay away was a humbling experience for everyone. Well, except maybe Ivory. She was hoping that her sending Amel home would send a message to the other queens. Too bad that message was, I'm a mediocre lip syncer. Of course, Hollywood was congratulated, as well she should be, but she seemed to downplay her win, if you ask me. Or, more likely, it was because Ashley Madison went on and on and on about what a hot, wet mess she was after getting read so hard by the judges last week. I mean, it must have been a shock for her. That's probably the first time in Ashley's 25 years that her nipples have gotten a negative reaction of any kind. Well, to her face anyway. They're down here. Rita Menu must have smelled blood in the water where Ashley was concerned, because when Ashley said she thought her runway was what saved her from lip syncing, Rita said she didn't get it. Apparently, Rita didn't think it was rainbowy enough. Well, Miss Nips didn't waste any time in pointing out that Rita's white onesie and draped fabric was hardly hiding a pot of gold either. Seriously. What was Rita thinking wearing something like that down the runway? It looked like underwear with fabric softener sheets stuck to it. Tell me I'm wrong. Needless to say, this cemented Rita and Ashley's relationship as BFFs. Do the kids still say BFFs? The next day in the workroom, Ivory must have been feeling her oats a little too much for Hollywood, because she out and out asked Ivory how she's going to stay out of the bottom this week. Well, if that's not shots fired, I don't know what is. Clearly, Ivory didn't. She didn't even blink an eye. She just said her plan was to be gayer and louder. Well, if it worked for Candy Muse. Thankfully, Ru showed up with this week's mini challenge. The queens had 20 minutes to get into boudoir drag to take a sexy selfie between the sheets. The big surprise was the pit crew were already between those sheets. Sacrifices those queens make to win a crown, eh? Seriously. Needless to say, this was just some cheeky fun with the queens and the pit crew, and when the innuendo stopped innuendoing, well, it was Gabriella Labucci who'd won. Here's to Gabriella. Well done, seriously. Then it was Maxi challenge time. The queens were attending a wedding, but they were going to have to make their own outfits from the photo shoot bedding, aka Muriel's bedding. Oh, it was such a good movie. Well, as you can imagine, it was a free-for-all as the queens grabbed as much bling as they could for themselves. And when that ran out, they fought over the soft furnishings. But trust me, there was nothing soft about it. Poor Gabriella Labucci was barely able to grab herself more than the drags. Try harder, Gabriella! Seriously. As they de-dragged, Ivana and Ashley talked about the upcoming challenge and how Ivana's husband, Anita Winglet, was eliminated on her sewing challenge. Anita's advice to Ivana: don't get eliminated on the sewing challenge. I should have that printed on a t-shirt. Lar, D'Souza, are you listening? It quickly became known that Isis was a bit of a sewing protege, and the rest of the queens quickly and heavily relied on her. You know, I do have to give it to Isis. She didn't compromise her own work, yet was very generous with her time where each and every queen was concerned. That's class right there. Ivory, on the other hand, wasn't doing anything to win friends and influence people, which surprised me. I mean, for someone who barely escaped Shantaeing herself, she was feeling more than her oats, I'm not afraid to say. She must have been sitting on some pretty impressive sewing skills to be that kind of lippy, if you ask me. I'm so serious. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. Madame Labucci had a plethora of ugliness to shift through, but as she told Ashley, it's Muriel's wedding. The theme is, you're terrible. Ashley wasn't sold, probably because she thought Gabriella was too deep and terrible to turn back now. Such a judgment. Thankfully, Ru showed up with Raven looking extra rock and roll to hear the queen's plans and tell them why those plans sucked. First up, Isis and her dirty pillows. Personally, I think Isis should have shut her pie hole with the whole "I used to work in bridal" thing that fell out of her mouth. That's the kind of thing you say on the runway when everyone's gagging on your eleganza. Seriously, what are they teaching the kids these days in school? But as it was, Raven was quick to point out that they were now expecting big things from her. And you know, they did not mean that in a sexy way. Poor Ivory was next, bless. Right out of the gate, Ru reminded her that, well, she was in the bottom last week. So, to change the subject, Raven just flat out asked Ivory if she knew how to sew. Ivory's answer: I know how to put fabric together and I have great taste. Ru's translation: that's a big whopping no. Yet, despite her lack of sewing prowess, Ivory wanted to make a bridal gown too. Ru was less than convinced, and yes, sewing prowess was my drag queen name in high school. Bumpa Love was next, but Ru was less interested in talking to her about her bridal couture, and more so in her runway walk from last week. Apparently, Ru seemed to think that Bumpa was drunk or lost. And Bumpa didn't say that she wasn't. What Bumpa did say was that she was going to use non-stretch fabric to make a dress to highlight her Bumpa Love tattoo. That's right, she has a tattoo of herself. That's Oprah level self-love right there. Miss Nips was next, and she had the same exact fabric that poor Ivory did. But when Ru asked how Ashley was going to make that work for her, her answer was simply, well, I can sew. Seriously, if that's not an example of what Nips is going to bring to the reading challenge, if she survives that long, those other queens should be worried. No wonder Ashley has a reputation for being a bitch. She is. Halfway through making her outfit, Hollywood realized that Isis was right and that the bath mat thing she wanted to work with was, well, just too hard to sew. So she just up and changed what she was making. Or Isis did. I'm still really not sure what happened. While all this was going down, Gabriella was slowly descending into the depth of her own madness, created by second-guessing all her choices, including using glue instead of thread. The next day in the workroom, the question as to who made Hollywood's new outfit was brought up by Ivana via Gabriella, unbeknownst to Ivana. What did I tell you? Drama! Needless to say, Hollywood denied the accusations by assuring the queens that all Isis did was a few hems. I would like to point out that she's wearing a halter top dress with a handkerchief skirt. All that outfit is hems. Clearly there were some queens who felt there was a threshold to how much help Isis was allowed to give, and they felt Hollywood crossed it. I wonder if they'd feel the same way about that dress if it had been ugly. And by some queens were feeling a certain way, I mean Bumpa. As one of the older queens, Bumpa feels everyone should be self-reliant with their drag. Okay, she's the oldest. As the queens discussed marriage, Isis reflected on how she used to dress as a bride as a child, and now she was going to do it again on the main stage of RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under. I got misty. And then it was time for the main stage. Ru looked gorgeous this week, although I will say I like the color of her dress more than the actual fabric. All that fringe was fighting itself. It distracted me is what I'm saying. Something else that distracted me was how beautiful Michelle Visage looked this week. I would have killed her for that hair in the 80s, I'm serious. Reese was looking particularly put together this week, like a ventriloquist dummy. Evil, gay ventriloquist. What, I didn't have to say gay? Joining the judges this week was the beyond beautiful Maria Thattil, Miss Universe Australia 2020. Then it was time for the runway. Category is Muriel's Belly. First up was Ivana Drink. Now, I know that Ivana was worried at how sheer her fabric was, but because it was white, I felt it reflected a lot of light and wasn't too distracting, for me anyway. What was distracting was that sheet she had hanging off her back. She didn't even iron it. Fresh out of the package. Seriously. Finger don't. Just saying. God bless Rita Menu. Her outfit was cute, but it was a little too subdued. The skirt needed to be fuller and possibly longer. The shoulder poofs should have been bigger. That wig was an afterthought. She just needed more. Finger don't for Rita, I hate to say it. Next up was contender number 1 in the Battle of the Red Fabric, Miss Nips herself. Ashley didn't lie. She can sew, and proved it by making this asymmetrical bit of all right. And look, no nipples. Fingerdoo for Ashley. Contender number 2 for the Battle of the Red Fabric couldn't have been less of a threat. Poor Ivory's attempt at couture actually looked more like a character from Cirque du Soleil, and not in the sexy way. Not only did this dress not fit Ivory, but she kept holding her hands up over her bodice so we couldn't get a clear picture of how it fit, which of course just made the whole thing look worse. I think the only way this dress could have looked better is if poor Ivory had actually made a sack for potatoes. Finger don't. I thought Bumper did an excellent job for someone who got little, if any, help from Isis. Fingerdoo for Bumper. How you be self-reliant, I'm just saying. For all the controversy, I thought Hollywood's dress was okay. It was more of a summer sundress than a wedding dress, in my opinion. Not that she didn't look good in it. I love the matching bandeau, but I wish it didn't have that big chunky tie at the back. Still, Fingerdoo for Holly, just saying. I'm going to say this. Gabriella Labucci sold the hell out of that ugly dress. Did I love it? No! Did I hate it? Look at that face. How could I? Fingerdoo for Senora Labucci. And then it was time for Isis Avis Loren, the queen of the sewing machine, to take the stage in her bridal gown. Now, don't get me wrong, it was lovely, but I hated her makeup. And the fact that pink sash of fabric just kind of happened at the top of her dress without rhyme or reason bothered me. Still, how do you not give Isis a Fingerdoo? She looks stunning. I mean, for someone with 2 black eyes. Floor looked more like a jewelry shop worker than a ring bearer, but she looked so cute in her 2-piece with matching purse that I had to give her a Fingerdoo. Starting to secretly like her. Then Ru wasted no time in telling Nips, Madison, Gabriella Labucci, and Floor that they were safe. Yes, you heard that right. Gabriella was safe. Now that's how you sell a garment. Up first for the judges' critique, Ivana Drink. You know, I think this queen is about 2 years away from greatness. But who can wait? Michelle was impressed with her outfit enough that she actually thought Ivana could sew. But what she thought Ivana needed more experience with was ironing out those fold lines. Seriously, Maria also felt that Ivana needed more energy on the runway. She kind of looked bored and lost. Seriously, it's episode 2. She knows where she is. Rita Menu was next, poor thing. Michelle's big problem, well, with Rita's outfit anyway, was that as a flower girl, she needed flowers. Ru thought she just needed, well, more drag. was all just a little too pedestrian for our Miss Charles, apparently. Poor Ivory was next, and although Michelle did like her energy on the runway this time, she was not a fan of how pregnant her outfit was making her look. Rue, on the other hand, was curious as to how poor Ivory managed to get her titties to look like they were in two different dresses at the same time. Bumpa was next and was an all-round fave of the judges, except for Rue, who wondered why Bumpa doesn't do a final pose at the end of the runway. She's old. Maybe she has to pee. Up next was the ever-stunning Hollywood, who was another clear fave of the judges. She was gorgeous. She was a model. She also admitted Isis helped her with the hem. It was a good night for Holly. Speaking of a good night, Isis was the last to be judged, but I use the term judge loosely. It was more of a love-in. The only critique the judges could give her was Michelle feeling that Isis's makeup was too heavy for a wedding look. Well, whose wedding? Back in the workroom, Miss Nips was wondering how Gabriella and Fleur weren't in the bottom for their runway. She assumed that she must have served some pretty big characters to make their outfits less sucky. Well, she wasn't wrong. As for the rest of the queens, it was clear to everyone that Isis was going to win the challenge, and everyone was more or less okay with that. But poor Ivana was stressing. The last thing Anita said to her as she was leaving for Drag Race was, "Don't get eliminated on the sewing challenge." And well, now she was worried that that was what was about to happen. Bless her. Rita was another one who thought she was going to be lip-syncing, and, well, no one contradicted her. Of course, poor Ivory was lip-syncing. Week 2, second time in the bottom, in that dress, it was a perfect storm for failure. Of course, she didn't see it that way. She felt that she'd given the judges more energy on the runway, and that, well, she just about made her whole dress on her own, more or less. And, well, that those two things should keep her out of the bottom. And if it were left up to just that, I'd be okay with it. But then poor Ivory went on the defensive in a very aggressive way where Hollywood was concerned. She called Hollywood's dress a glorified apron because it tied in the back. And even if poor Ivory had a point, everyone agreed that Hollywood's apron was way better than Ivory's outfit. But I still want to give a cheers out to Miss Hollywood Star. The way she handled poor Ivory's selfish little rant was so classy, and I love the fact that she pointed out that, well, poor Ivory may not even be there at the end of the day, so why bother? I love you, Hollywood! Back on the main stage, it was announced that this week's winner, surprise, surprise, was Isis Avis Loren. As well it should be. Here's to Isis. Well done! Seriously. Landing in the bottom, as well was expected this week, was Ivana, Rita, and poor Ivory. But, much to Ivana's relief, it was Rita and Ivory who would be lip-syncing. And then, even more drama! Clearly being in the bottom was far too much for poor Ivory. At first, I thought she was going to throw up. And then, well, she started fanning herself. And before that, Rue was calling for somebody to catch her before she hit the stage. Yes! For the first time in Drag Race history, a queen fainted before the final lip sync. Well, needless to say, everyone was stunned. But then, as fast as it happened, it was over. Rita and poor Ivory were standing on stage, assuming their positions, but Rue had another idea. For the first time in Drag Race history, again, Rue was canceling the lip sync. Was she keeping both queens? No. But for the safety and fairness of poor Ivory, Rue was postponing the lip sync to the start of next week's episode. Gasp. Needless to say, everyone was gagged. Again. Can I get an amen? Roll the credits. Seriously. So, what about you? Were you gagged, or did you just want Rue to send both queens home? I have to say, I was surprised at how aggressively poor Ivory started standing up for herself. Was it a desperate act by a desperate queen? Was she lashing out because her back was up against the wall, or is she just a bitch? And what about Rita? As the dancing diva of Hamilton, she must be chomping at the bit to dance it out at that lip sync, but now we got to wait a whole week to see how this is all going to play out. I don't know why, but I have a soft spot in my heart for poor Ivory, so I'm hoping she Shantae's, but I wouldn't bet on it. How about you? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and while you're down there, please support this channel by giving my video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribing to my channel if you haven't. You can also support the Fingerdoo review by leaving a tip through the YouTube thanks button at the bottom of the screen, or by using one of the links in my description box to leave a tip or do, buy your own Wilma merch at my Redbubble store, or join the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, where we do two live chats a month. Until next time, miss me! Seriously, Jorge. Such drama. I fainted. Have you fainted? It's terrible. I had this weird dream. I felt like I had been asleep for hours, seconds. So disorientated when I woke up. I'm excited to see Rita, the dancing diva of Hamilton, dance it out like a diva. If she doesn't, I don't know what'll I do. I can't dance. I just clap harder for the ones that do. Oh, look how spin again!